9 weeks down, 9 weeks to go. We have reached the halfway point of the 2024 NFL season. We are a couple weeks away from Buy-Mageddon. So get your stuff in order now. Let's go. Welcome to the Dynasty Stock Market with bigz and DFK right here on Player Profiler News. It's week 10. We've got 9 weeks in the books. We've got 9 weeks to go. 7, 8 if you're talking about fantasy playoffs, but in the NFL season, we're at the halfway point. Lot of things that need to be considered this week. You have to take very, very good stock of where your team is at, what you're looking like for the playoffs, what your draft pick stash looks like. Are you a contender? Are you a pretender? Do you have a little bit of wiggle? Are you just on the cusp? We are here to tell you the things that you need to do this week, like go out and grab Cooper Rush.
Get him. And
Get him.
Yeah, sucks Dak's down. Potential IR candidate, but Cooper Rush we've seen be decent for real NFL and spot starts. But for fantasy, you'll take your 14 to 17 points if you can get them. And it's getting kind of desperate on these waiver streets.
And in case you haven't heard, in case you're just tuning in here and you haven't been on Twitter, haven't been on ESPN or whatever, Jonathan Mingo has been traded to the Dallas Cowboys. So at this point, you got a three-headed monster in Dallas of CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, and Jonathan Mingo.
There he is.
In addition, Khalil Herbert has been reprieved from the Bears' backfield, and he is on the move to the Bengals as well. They're dealing with Zach Moss's injury. After watching Chase Brown against the Raiders, is there any reason for anybody else to be in that backfield in Cincinnati?
No, and good job on everyone who held on to Chase Brown. I remember in the offseason helping one of my friends who was in a league go out and acquire Chase Brown. And it's kind of makes sense. It's a normal path for a running back. You either take over for someone because of injury or buy play in your first or second year. And, good offense. So, absolutely could see him having a good role, especially if Higgins stays out. They've got Jamar Chase and Mike Gesicki, but other than that, it's kind of Chase Brown as their other playmaker. So he's got a really good role. And regardless, we've seen with all of these trades, week one after the trade, the player doesn't do anything. So Khalil Herbert is not going to even be involved really this first week. Yes, he's a veteran back who will be able to get the ball rolling pretty soon, but it's going to be the Chase Brown show immediately week one. And that's going to be your trade opportunity. But if you're contending, hold on. And he's got actually a decent runway for his career going forward. I'm just saying if you can get, a big overpay, then obviously do that after this big game that I definitely think is going to happen this week.
Yeah, if you are a Khalil Herbert holder on tour, because he hasn't really produced much. So if he's actually on your roster, it's just you biding your time. Now's the time to kind of get rid of him. He's going to have a little bit more value with a change of scenery. Not a whole lot, but a little bit more. We got Aaron Bigler checking in, rebuilding in all 3 dynasty leagues. And, that's my only question is, why aren't you in 17 or 32? but
run club.
Let's talk about rebuilding right now. Okay. If you're rebuilding, you're in a really good spot. Because you are sitting on assets. You may not realize it, but you're sitting on assets. And there are going to be teams that are, let's just say, not great, that think that they have a chance, that are sitting right on the cusp of the playoffs, maybe a game or two out, that don't have great prospects, especially considering the fact that week 12 and week 14 are terrible, terrible bye weeks. Week 11 is a bad one too, but week 12 is really like week 12 is the killer. And that seems to be pretty close to the playoff cutoff. So what you should be doing is targeting some of those teams that have week 12 bye weeks or week 14 bye weeks. Because I mean, that's really like the start of the playoffs. Target those teams, figure out what their needs are going to be for those bye weeks, and then just start sending them offers. Make them overbid on your draft, on the draft picks that are coming back to you. And now is the time to do that, especially if you're in a rebuild.
Yeah, just to mention what those teams are for week 14, that's the Ravens on bye, Denver Broncos, Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts, New England Patriots, Washington Commanders. So there are quarterbacks involved, running backs, and receivers. It's actually not so much. It's really just Nico Collins and Zay Flowers, Terry McLaurin out of that mix. Maybe Downs holders, but running backs and quarterbacks people are going to be desperate for in week 14.
Well, in one of my leagues, I actually have Flowers, McLaurin, and then a bunch of quarterbacks and running backs. When I drafted, I wasn't really looking at the bye week, and I got done with the draft and looked, and I have 6 players total out of like a full IDP lineup that are actually like gonna be not on bye. So that's an L for me. We've got David Smith. Give me the secrets. That's what we're here for. Okay, so as far as trading is concerned, if you're trying to rebuild, what you want to do is you want to acquire as many draft picks and young players that have been given up on that you can. So we're talking about Kendre Miller, Roshan Johnson, some of those guys who have been kind of left by the wayside in terms of the narrative. And you're going to want to take advantage of your older players, your Calvin Ridley, guys who have high upside but haven't really produced, but they're still kind of in the national consciousness, like a Jalen Waddle, a Deebo Samuel, guys like that. You're going to want to move those pieces. And the best way to do that, to increase the leverage that you have, is to go ahead and make a post, like get into that group chat and just say, hey guys, I'm shopping these. Who wants to kind of make a run for the playoffs or whatever? Now, whether or not you get multiple hits, you still have that public address of this is what I'm doing. So if you do get somebody on the hook, then you can go ahead and say, well, I'm playing with offers. So, and we talked about that. Somebody tried to game me like that. When you're on the other side of it, that's what you should be doing. Like I was saying, haha, you're not going to get me. But if I was on his side, he played it exactly how I would have played it. Right. So you only have one guy who you're getting an offer from. You make sure that he knows that you're dealing with multiple offers. Well, I am dealing with your package is almost there, but let's try this and see if that works. That's what you need to do is you get into that negotiation process. And if your initial post is public, then you have a little bit more wiggle room. If you're just like sending DMs to people, you don't really have a whole lot to go on. But if you throw that out in public, and then especially if you get replies from it, you're gold.
And whatever you get out of that, if you're getting draft picks and you're going to end up drafting players, one of the things you gotta have is patience. Like it's a long time until the next season as a rebuilder, right? But once the draft season comes around, don't just start trading away those picks for names you already know. At this point, have some faith and belief in the drafting process. Whether you're looking towards Player Profiler or others for some draft guidance, trust in that process and let those guys develop. Give them the next season. I see a lot of times where folks end up amassing a stockpile of draft picks, and then they're like, all right, I'll just combine these 2 seconds to get this, Deontay Johnson, or I'll combine this to, get this known player. But a lot of the value is going to be in those young players. So, now that you're rebuilding, stick to the course. If you can get an absolute producing stud, go for those deals, obviously. But now's the time to show some aggressiveness to get some deals done while these teams are looking to get into the playoffs and win the playoffs. But then once you get those picks, sit back, hold on to those, keep making other deals here and there for some scrap parts. But you're going to need to be patient and buckle up because it's going to be a long offseason for you.
Yeah, and I have something to add to that, but what's up, Harambe Jungle? All right, I'm going to add to that a little bit. And when you talk about patience, it can be more than a year. It can be more than just the rest of this season, especially if you're dealing with draft picks. So, for example, let's talk about my home league for a second. At quarterback, I have Jaden Daniels and I have Jordan Love on the bench. It's a single quarterback league. I have Breece Hall, Travis Etienne. I have Malik Neighbors. I have Brock Bowers. I have Jalen Wright, Roshan Johnson, Blake Corum, Trey Benson, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I have a lot of like super young guys who have a whole lot of talent upside. But once again, I'm staring at 10th place, first pick. I have some points against luck that has gone against me. But at the same time, my lineup, when I have play, I'm low points in the league right now, right? But I have so much talent on my roster because I've been rebuilding. I had an expectation that this year was going to be the year that everybody kind of went off. Well, I've been waiting on guys that took 8 weeks, 9 weeks, and I sunk at the beginning of the season. So it's going to be another year for me. I'm in a position right now where potentially, if everything breaks right for me, I could start completely dominating this league next year. It would be the worst time for me to start trying to unload assets to keep the rebuild going. My roster churn is finished. I spent a couple years doing that. Right now, I just have to sit back on the guys that I have, know that I'm still going to have some high draft picks next year. It could even be a situation where I take the high draft picks that I have, and when I get into the draft room in our rookie draft next year, I start unloading those guys for some supplemental veterans that are going to help me out next year while these other guys break out. So I'm in a good position both with assets and with draft picks that I have a lot of plays, right? If we're talking about poker, I have all of the outs on the table, right? So patience is such a virtue in Dynasty. Poker is a great analogy. You have to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. Right now, in some leagues, I need to start pushing some trade offers and get out from under some of my draft picks. In other leagues, I have to start taking those draft picks and moving them for somebody that's going to push me into the playoffs. One of the things is you have a quest, especially if you're just on the outside, a game or two out right now. You got to get somebody into your lineup that is going to push you over the top and get you into that 6th spot, get you into that 4th spot in the playoffs. Because once the playoffs happen, once the playoffs start, anything can happen.
And Harami actually asked a question about an example of a player who we had to wait on. I'm not sure if you even buy into him or not, but Quentin Johnson, what do you do with Quentin Johnson? I have him in Dynasty and was thinking of moving on, but his future looks good with coaching and QB play. And one of the things I think people forgot was Herbert was dealing with a foot injury to start the season. I think it was Liz Frank related. But we also know that most of the blame was just put on, hey, this is a run-first team because of the run-first coach. But maybe with Herbert being a little bit more healthy and them just understanding the offense, this is a more usable offense for Quentin Johnson to be in. I watched some of those catches, and yes, there was some drops in that last game, but still, you might be able to just – I still want to sell, to be honest, but now you might be able to get closer to that second-round pick range just by waiting a little bit more time. But what do you think about Quentin Johnson? Are you holding or moving on?
That depends on where you stand. This is where I see that whole offense shaking out. Justin Herbert has that throwing upside. they're going to find themselves in a position where he's going to need to throw the ball. Right now, he understands finally what he has in Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey is going to be the target leader for the Chargers moving forward. That makes Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer very similar supplemental targets in that offense. They're both fairly capable. I mean, we look at what they did the last few weeks. Johnston didn't play in week 7 or week 8, but he did in week 9 against a pretty poor Cleveland offense. Now, he went out and he had 5 targets. Josh Palmer had 3 or 4. Palmer's been averaging 4 targets each week. He's also been averaging 10 points has been his floor the last month. 17 would be his ceiling. He hasn't hit that yet. He got close this last week because he had that touchdown upside. But he's been able to, especially with his depth of target and his yards per reception, Josh Palmer has kind of like put himself into the conversation of a wide receiver 5, your flex 3. So if you have 3 flex spots or 4 flex spots, these are guys that you want to consider. If you have a shallower league, a shallower starting lineup, like two flex spots, for example, these are the kinds of guys that they may hit like 22 points for Quentin Johnston, and then that's when you want to move on from them. If you have those flex spots, these are guys that you want to hold. If you have a shorter starting lineup, these are guys that you want to move.
Well said.
All right, we got Fizzle Dallas. What's poppin', family? There's not a whole lot going on today.
Yeah, what's up, Fizz? What's going on?
So we're just talking some Dynasty. All right, we got I have Marvin Harrison, CeeDee Lamb, Debo, and QJ would be my wide receiver 4 or flex. I really I would try and get out from under Debo and QJ.
Yeah, you had just said that too. Time to get rid of Debo.
Yeah. Let's look at the trade market a little bit. Some of the guys that have been going. If you're trying to supplement
it up already,
wide receiver, it looks like some of the biggest. Josh Downs has been pretty popular in trades. Cedric Tillman, Deontay Johnson, of course, Brandon Ayuk, Terry McLaurin. So I think those are some of the guys that people are willing to move off of. And we have Harambe getting in here. If I can figure out how this mouse works. You're thinking about keeping QJ and trading Debo. I would, if you're going to keep one, I would keep Johnston. Again, I feel like, and this seems really wild to say, from this point going forward, rest of career, I feel like Johnson is going to have a better floor each week. He's going to be more consistent and more reliable than Debo. Does that seem weird?
It's just because of the injuries. Debo's consistently had those injuries over his career, and he's the only receiver that's in that kind of receiver running back mold, which makes him more susceptible to injury. And it's just a time thing. Like, he's probably got 4 years tops, and I don't know how effective he's going to be. I love the situation he's in with Justin Herbert, QJ, that is. So, look, at the end of the day, we were quick to write him off. I shouldn't say we, but he was written off quickly. But right now, you got to just respect the fact that they went into the season with either him or Ladd as the wide receiver 1, a number 2 year player or a rookie player, and that's what they're going to roll with in this next season. They've got a good record, so where they're going to be picking in the draft, it's not going to be the first or second wide receiver option. So they may be rolling into this next season with these guys too. I like what he's doing right now. He put up some decent numbers, 118 yards, again, like you said, only 4 catches on 5 targets, but that's efficient for what that is.
And that's the thing that you can take away from both Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston from just simply from QJ from this last game against the Browns, and then Palmer for the last month, is that McConkey is the underneath guy. He's the guy that is going to be that possession receiver, the guy that Herbert is going to rely on, the guy that he's going to be like closer to the line of scrimmage, and Herbert's just going to target over and over again. But when Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer get open down the sidelines or on deep crossers or things like that, Herbert's going to be hitting them deeper. So their per catch upside is going to be
I see what
higher.
you mean.
And so they're going to have some of those spike games where they only have 3 catches, but that turns into 120 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, with Debo, you're depending on a lot more yak and him making it happen himself. And I'm seeing some deals where Debo can still fetch a first. I'm seeing Debo plus a 3rd-round pick for a first as of today, and I actually see that happen in two different trades. I'm seeing a 3rd in TJ Hawkinson for Debo. Not sure exactly about that. I think you can get more, but Debo for a 2nd, I'm seeing multiple times. A lot of package deals, you can still get a first included, just depending on what's your other little pieces. Like I see Debo and J.K. Dobbins for a 1st and a 2nd.
I mean, if you've got Bowers and Gesicki, I have no problem trading away Hawk.
Yeah.
And would you call Mike Gesicki like the surprise tight end of the year?
No, you're not. No, I'm going to tell you why you're not even surprised, even though you asked the question. Because guess what? The first few weeks of the season, didn't we keep thinking that Gesicki was so close to having these bigger games, but it was either his shoelace was out of bounds or just barely didn't come up with the catch? Like, you know what I mean? Like early in the season, it was a clear correlation that when T. Higgins was out, that Gesicki was good. And now what ended up happening is also Eric All started to emerge a little bit, taking a little bit of those catches. But now Eric All out for the season with a torn ACL. You couldn't have forecasted that. But, it's wheels up for Gesicki because he's not a blocking tight end. That's not what he does. He just runs around, runs routes, and he's got one of the best quarterbacks in the game.
My big question going with Gesicki going into the season was how Brian Callahan leaving Cincinnati was going to affect what Joe Burrow did with tight end, because he had not been targeting tight end in that offense
at all.
While Brian Callahan was there. And now you look at the Tennessee Titans and they're not doing a whole lot with the tight end either. So it turns out that yes, that wasn't that was a Brian Callahan thing. That wasn't a Joe Burrow thing. So now Joe Burrow has that athletic big slot tight end in Gesicki, and they're starting to develop that relationship. It's going to be huge going forward for Mike Gesicki because, we saw flashes of it in Miami, and now it's starting to kind of bear out. And the Eric All injury this last week, that hurts. That it helps Gesicki, but it hurts some of us that were pretty high on Eric All the last couple of weeks because he's started to flash.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of run through where we're looking at season leaders right now. We have in the top 5 quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts are 1, 3, and 5. Not really a surprise. Jane Daniels is QB4. Joe Burrow is just on the outside at QB6. QB2, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
So if you are somebody who's in need of a quarterback, say you had Dak Prescott and you're looking to, you're a contender with Dak Prescott and, a low first round pick, targeting Baker Mayfield, targeting Joe Burrow, Geno Smith at number 7. I'm not even going to get into QB8 in Bo Nix, we'll talk about Bo Nix right after this, but, Baker Mayfield is not considered a top 10 kind of guy. Are you looking to make a trade offer for Baker Mayfield to shore up that quarterback position if you just lost Dak?
Yes, because he's been able to produce this season, but not only when he had all his weapons, he's continued the production even with losing Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and we still expect Mike Evans to return. And the guys who have been leading the backfield are all young. The receiving core have been all young. Maybe Trey Palmer and your boy Jalen McMillan, take a step forward with Evans as the primary target or attention drawer from defenses, right? So I think the offense can kind of get back into that rhythm if they're only down one of their star playmakers. But even still, 18 points in his last game without Godwin and Evans, and 22 before then when those guys were getting hurt. And then really great games before that. I'm totally fine with it. It's kind of unfortunate that he's got the bye coming up in week 11, but who cares? It's a pretty light schedule after that. You got the Giants, Carolina, your Raiders, and then Chargers, Dallas, Carolina again. I mean, that's a money slate for Baker Mayfield for the rest of the season. And I got lucky that I had traded for Baker. I traded a first for Baker plus Aaron Rodgers, 2027 first for Baker and Aaron Rodgers, right at the beginning of the season. And that's looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, because both of them going forward are going to be pretty good. Baker has San Francisco next week, which could sink his value even lower. And then he's got the bye in week 11. So over the next couple weeks, Baker becomes a serious buy. He's got the Giants, Carolina, like you said, the cakewalk in week 14 against the Raiders. Then he's got the Chargers, which could turn into a shootout type game. Looking at the colors of the matchups, he had 28 points against Philadelphia, which was a red matchup, and the Chargers is a red matchup for him. And then Dallas and Carolina to finish out the playoffs. It's interesting because in another league I was looking at, I have Mike Evans. It's a redraft league. there you go.
A lot more green to go.
And there will be some analysts over the next couple days who are going to be putting out their rest of season matchups. So maybe start a Twitter search for rest of season matchup, wide receiver or something like that. And something's going to hit over the next few days. And that'll help you to kind of like fine tune what your targets are if you're a contender. But I'm a contender in a redraft league. It's one that I've talked about a lot on this show, and I'm not going to again. But I'm right there in the mix with Chalk and Jax, like 1, 2, and 3. They have me on points, but Chalk and I are at the top in record. And I've got Nico coming back this coming week. And then I've got Mike Evans, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with Mike Evans because my last bench spot is Khalil Shakir. This is a bye week for a couple guys, and I have to start Shakir. But I was looking at Evans and what to expect moving forward. And he has what are good matchups for Baker. He has bad matchups for wide receivers in the last 5 weeks of the season. And for some reason, that kind of scared me. So what are we looking at when we start to look at these matchups and what it means for quarterbacks and wide receivers? When it's a good matchup for a quarterback, but it's a bad matchup for wide receiver, how do you read that?
Well, a lot of times I look first at Vegas point totals, the implied totals for how they think some of these games are going to pan out. And I know for the rest of the season, they're not going to have that necessarily. But on a week-to-week matchup, if I'm looking, for one, I'm looking, is this going to be a high-scoring game? And does the team whose receiver or, player I'm looking at, are they on the losing end of that side? If they are, then I expect them to be trailing and throwing the ball a lot. If they're going to be on the winning side, it's going to be more of a run approach. And if you really want to get into the weeds, there's some sites that will actually map out the cornerback matchups and let you know how tough some of those cornerbacks are. So that's something else that you could go look for as well. We might have some folks covering that. But, looking just at those point totals, and if they're going to be winning or losing, I think that's a big determiner of what I'm going to do in some of those spots.
The other thing that I like to kind of project is where the team is going to be as far as their own contention. And if it's a team that's out like Carolina goes out and wins in week 9 to screw up their draft spot and let my Raiders take the lead for the Cam Ward sweepstakes. but is this team in playoff contention? Like a perfect example would be the 49ers. The 49ers think that they're in it. And it's funny how the parallel between like guys in your fantasy league and teams in the NFL, what their own perception of their standing is. And you have like the 49ers who are in probably the toughest division in football. You've got the Rams contending. You got the Seahawks like giving the Rams a run for their money. You've got the Arizona Cardinals, who are just that snippy little team that is going to jump up. They'll finish around 500, but they're going to bite people in the butt along the way. They're going to win the games that you think that they're going to lose, and they're going to lose the games you think that they may have a chance to win. That's the story of the Cardinals. And then you have the 49ers, who they have the talent, they have the coaching, they have the pedigree, they have the recent history. But they very may well be out of it by week 15. So how incentivized are they going to be in getting into a week 14, week 15 shootout? I know the NFL players play to win. They don't play to tank. They don't. The Panthers this last week are a perfect example of that.
Yeah. No, this is a classic dilemma that you're talking about right now.
Right.
Such a classic thing. It's like with my Brees Hall share, it's like, are the Jets going to be good and going to want to actually risk him being injured when they have a whole nother season? You know, like those type of things always happen. We do have some breaking news. Do you want to go ahead and drop it?
I didn't see it. What are we?
Mike Williams headed to the Steelers.
Oh,
traded away from the New York Jets. Brought to you by Ethan B. Appreciate you, Ethan.
Sorry about your Van Jefferson shares, everybody.
Yeah, hey, that's real. Nah.
So Brianna checks in. That's so weird. Good for QB, bad for wide receiver. Yeah. I think that happens a lot when you have teams that are spread out in their offenses. A team like the Chiefs, where Patrick Mahomes may have, 24 completions over the course of a game, but 3 of them are going to go, or 4 of them are going to go to 6 different wide receivers. So it suppresses the wide receiver total, but helps the quarterback. And I think that's where we find that. Fizzle Dallas, big Jackson Smith and Jigba game.
And this Fizzle Dollars, by the way, like dollar sign.
Fizzle Dollars. Sorry, it looks
Nemo dollars. All right.
I'm even wearing my glasses. Time to cash out. I say no, especially in Dynasty.
No, Tyler Lockett eventually will be gone. You got to hold. I think the trade value will increase just the moment that Lockett is no longer on the team.
Yeah, and the fact that the dude showed that he can be primary guy without DK, that was a huge leap for him. And I think it's something that we knew with him coming out as a rookie, that his talent was through the roof. And this was his proving ground this last week. He totally proved it, especially against a tough matchup in the Rams. The Rams they're not a pushover. All right, good deal for player and team. Kind of hope Thielen would get moved. I'm a Leggett owner, but Mingo's gone, so that should help him a bit. It should help Leggett, and it also this is the second move that shows how much the Panthers love Jalen Coker. I know that Coker didn't have a great game this last week. But
no, you're so right. Isn't that crazy? Isn't it crazy though? It's like they trade 2 receivers in back-to-back weeks. It has to be the Leggett and Coker show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jatavian Sanders as well. I think they're going with a youth movement, and the Panthers are going to be good in about 4 years.
Yeah, they are the youngest team.
I say that, and my thumbnail for my Raiders show tonight is going to be 5-year rebuild, year 24. All right. I know it's an IDP, but Marshawn Lattimore has been traded to the Commanders, so that should help anyone playing the Saints, but hurt anyone playing the Commanders. I don't know. He's kind of hurt a lot, and if he's in, yeah, he's a tough go, but he proved this last week that he's not. If he's out, it's wheels up. Fizzle dollars. Yeah, sorry. I'm even wearing my glasses. All right, Norv Turner to Las Vegas as offensive assistant. What does this mean for our Raiders players? Oh, Brianna, you are a Raiders fan, or you're not. You just have a collective ownership of Raiders players. She's asking you, DFK. So I'm gonna step away from this.
Well, it's not like he's stepping in as the actual head coach. I thought that was interesting. So, we'll see, how much that helps. I want to see if with the running game, was it more Zamir White just not being good, or was it Alexander Madison? Like you're the Raiders guy, to be honest. So this
Right.
really is your team.
She clarified. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. So it doesn't move the needle for me at all. I feel like with the Raiders, the only startable players at all were Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. That doesn't change anything. I don't think that any decision that the Raiders make helps or hurts those two guys. Norv Turner is like, he's a veteran, and one of the things that Mark Davis has done is completely surround Antonio Pierce and this coaching staff with guys who have been around. Norv Turner is just another example of that. And let's face it, what the NFL teams need is an innovative mind to come in and figure out how to deal with some of these defenses that we're seeing. We saw last night, both the Chiefs and the Buccaneers were gaming on defense where they show single high safety. The Bucs did it. There was a play down the sideline to Worthy. He had just stepped out of bounds, but it was pretty close to a touchdown. And the Manning boys explained that what the Buccaneers did is they showed single high safety, and then they dropped another safety in coverage. So it was actually a cover 2, but it was disguised in coverage 1 form. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, and coaching staffs need to figure out how to game against these disguised defenses, because that's the trend right now, is disguising your defense so you can't get a good read on it. So what we've seen is that a lot of these guys who have been around the NFL for the last 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 5 decades, they're not it. And so I know that Norv Turner coming in as an assistant, I don't think, ultimate retread. That's that's kind of to my point. And no, he doesn't have to be better than Getsy, although that is a very low bar. But just if you look at the example of Bo Hardigree, who last year took over once Josh McDaniels was out, and he was the Raiders play caller, and the Raiders in the second half of the season went on an offensive tear. They didn't retain him as offensive coordinator, which I hope that they would. And now he's in Tennessee, and he's got people talking about Mason Rudolph. So that's the innovation that it's like Marvin Smith and Norv Turner, like maybe they have something to contribute as far as like practice, keeping the team together, having the position coaches be better at getting their packages in and on and off the field. But as far as like game planning and things like that, I don't think that they're as much in that conversation. And Brianna Huffman is an opponent of yours.
Yeah, we're in a 4-way tie for first place, 7-2 teams across the board. Nice. It's pretty nasty in there. So that's a tough league.
So Brianna is just trying to get some intel. She's trying to...
she's pretty sharp. She doesn't need our help though. You got it.
she's hanging on your every word, trying to figure out what you're gonna do, who you like and who you don't
hard
like.
To get a trade done.
All right, let's talk about Bo Nix for a second. Bo Nix is taking the NFL by surprise, or fantasy leagues anyway. Quarterback 8 so far at the halfway point in the season. We've seen this story play out before. Tales from the Geek.
Yeah,
she's getting your strategy.
Yeah, should Raiders have traded up a couple spots to go get them?
Question. No. So here's the thing. We've seen the Bo Nix story play out in a couple of different ways. I'm going to throw out a name, Justin Fields. And then another name I'm going to throw out is Sam Howell. Right? Okay. By Justin Fields, what I'm talking about is real life bad, fantasy good. Daniel Jones is another one. Real life bad, fantasy good. They have top 10 fantasy upside. Meanwhile, they're not very good on the field. Bo Nix is efficient, which Justin Fields wasn't. But he's also like a close to the line of scrimmage passer, doesn't do a lot downfield, doesn't really move the ball except when he gets in trouble and he uses his legs. He's right around who was it that I was looking at? I'm not going to look at it again. Patrick Mahomes and another guy, like in terms of like passing touchdowns this year. He's right there with Patrick Mahomes. I think Mahomes passed him.
Yeah,
Or was
Mahomes
ahead,
has 11 and Nick's 8.
Yeah, and Mahomes had 3 last night, so that kind of pushed him. But going into this week, they were right around the same. And then Sam Howell was a top 10 quarterback last year in the first 14 weeks.
Leading the league in passing yards.
So what we see is guys bottoming out. And
because like Howell was tops in sacks and just couldn't take care of the ball.
Right, but it was also an absolutely terrible Washington offensive line, which they did some work with. But again, the Commanders, the past 2 seasons, they've been looking at top 10 quarterbacks through the first half of the year. And I don't know if you want to move on from Geno Smith. I mean, the guy has almost 200 rushing yards on the season. He's sitting at 2,500 passing yards, 11 passing touchdowns. He's QB7. Now, granted, he's 11 to 10 touchdown to interception rate, but notwithstanding, he's still quarterback 7 in fantasy. So Geno Smith is getting it done, and especially in a new offense with a new offensive coordinator and dealing with some of the injuries that they've dealt with. I think Geno Smith has done pretty well and shown that he can be the dude.
Yeah, because your original question was, are you picking up a Baker Mayfield type, a Geno Smith type? Those are guys you can actually acquire realistically. No one's really wanting to trade a Joe Burrow. No one's really wanting to trade the Jordan Love, but Smith's leading the league in passing yards, and still kind of a gettable name because people are unsure of the future. But he did get that contract, I think, before this season, so he'll be there for a while, and he's got at least one young core wide receiver I think he can rely on, and always going to have those running backs to dump it off to.
Brianna, this is Derek Carr over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I don't think the problem in Seattle is Geno Smith and the offense. I don't watch every game and I don't comb them very finely. But I think it's the defense and the divisional matchups that make it pretty tough.
Yeah, he's also 4th in sacks, so he's up there, Geno.
Yeah. You're not, and as show hosts, it's up to us to move along. So back to Bo Nix. Has he created an environment in which he now becomes a target for you with his rushing upside?
Yeah, and that was something we didn't know that he had. Because a lot of times pre-draft, I'll put guys in a bucket of statue quarterback or mobile quarterback, and had him on the statue side. But really with him being an older veteran kind of QB out of college, that was what made me nervous. But at the end of the day, I like his coach more than the other rookie quarterback coaches, and Sean Payton, and he has seemed to have kind of given him all the game he can handle of what to do in all of these tricky situations. At the line of scrimmage, Bo Nix is moving some things around, pointing some guys out. Like, he seems to know some of the nuances of how to get some guys to jump off sides, or some of these things where it's not just running the play, but the stuff around the play. So as far as your analogy of good in real life, or bad in real, or bad in real life, good for fantasy, I think he could still get better. I know he's an older prospect, so we feel like the potential is less, but he's got one of the best coaches to just keep feeding him knowledge that I think he's going to really benefit from. So yeah, I'm interested in going after him, and just fantasy wise, we know he's going to have a run. Like where Daniel Jones, the reason it's a problem that even though he's good in fantasy and bad in real life is that we know that his time is almost up. Because if they lose this week to the Panthers, he's either getting benched or done, not getting re-signed next year, and it might even cost the coach their job. But Nix, at this point, great record to start the year. Everyone, in the NFL staff circles is going to look back at this season like, hey, he had a good rookie season. So no matter how bad he does going forward, I think that's going to be factored in, and he's going to have a lot of runway going forward.
We had 3 guys that were exemplars in this last QB class who started off their careers in college football as kind of they were runners, and it took them, they were all either 5 or 6 year quarterbacks that you could see their running potential early, and it took them a few more years of seasoning. The 2 that stand out to me are Jaden Daniels does too, but he started off in the Pac-12 and then moved to the SEC. But Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr., they both started off in other conferences. They used their legs a lot, although Bo Nix did throw the ball a lot, right? So they get into their junior, first senior year, second senior year, and being a Pac-12 guy on the West Coast, I paid attention to both Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix, and I saw a lot of the same things. Their footwork wasn't great. Their arms, like, they weren't very accurate. They tended to stare down their targets, things like that. And so when they were potential to come out in 2023, I studied a lot of their game film, and those were the 2 things that stood out to me that I wasn't very high on. They both their foot position when they threw the ball, feet and shoulders, and then how they stared down their targets. And what I saw in their final years during 2023 was that those were worked on and worked out. They stopped doing that, and you could see up until the national championship game, in which Michigan just had Michael Penix completely flummoxed with their defensive scheming. Physically, both of those guys did a lot of work on those 2 aspects of their game. And so we knew about their rushing upside. With Bo Nix, he was an older guy. With Michael Penix, he's an older guy that has dealt with a lot of injuries. Do we really want him to run a lot? But they very much refined their arm talent. And the one thing that I think held Bo Nix back the most of the class was the fact that he just didn't move the ball down the field with deep throws and everything. He had some chemistry with Troy Franklin. I thought anyway that was going to kind of like show itself in the NFL. It hasn't to this point. But what really is standing out is his he takes those, he has his very, very short reads, quick, either check down or run with it. And that's what his strengths were as a game manager. And I think that's what Sean Payton liked about him. Michael Penix Jr., it would be interesting to see if he could have gone to a team that would have drafted him in those first 15 picks and then started him right away. What could he have contributed? Jordan Travis was a very similar quarterback that didn't have the seasoning of the extra 2 years that those guys had. Anthony Richardson is another one. That rushing upside, we see it, but they don't stay in college for a couple years to get that seasoning. Jaden Daniels, we knew exactly what he was going to be coming out, and he has absolutely showed that. As far as Penix, what do we see? And Penix 2 years longer. I don't think if the Falcons make a playoff run, I think we see another season of Penix on the bench, unless something catastrophic happens to Cousins. I think Cousins finishes out 2025, and 2026 is Penix's start year.
Yeah, Cousins is 4th in yardage. He's up there in touchdowns as well. He's also 4th in touchdowns with 17, only 7 interceptions. Cousins is one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now.
So let's agree we're going to target Bo Nix. Let's talk about our running backs real quick. Starting at number 10, we've got Kenneth Walker. Number 9 is Chuba Hubbard, Devon Achane, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyron Williams, Bijan, Saquon, Kamara, and Henry. Just how we all drew it up. It's only halfway through the season. I don't want to jinx anybody, but we still have time for those old guys to get hurt. James Conner at 12, James Cook at 11, Jacobs at 13, Mixon and Dobbins round out the top 15. Who are you targeting at running back? If you've got some draft pick capital to throw around and you need that boost.
Can you guess the player I'm thinking of? They used to be on the Raiders.
Josh Jacobs.
Yes, going after Josh Jacobs. He's on
That's
a
too
bye
big a
right
hit.
now. I know. I anyway, they're on bye right now, so not getting any production. So good week to go out and get someone on bye. Manager a little bit more likely to make the move if they need some points right now, especially if they're rebuilding. But he had a good first half of that last game. They took him out in the second half. Like we talked about earlier with the game script dependency. For the running back, he's still going to need them to be in a winning mode, but I think they'll be winning a lot of these games coming forward. Still believe he's got a lot of time left under his belt. He'll just be 27 going into next year. So let's just say you get one extra year, all right, in running back years, right? So I'm fine taking a shot on him. Only 3 touchdowns on the season, which is one of the fewest of a lot of these backs. So that's somewhere where he'd have to improve. And I think it's possible. Right now, we would only have to worry about Marshawn Lloyd coming back at some point, but he hasn't had enough reps to really make a difference. And he's not really getting a ton of pass work anyway. So I think they're going to just trust Jacobs at the goal line, especially when he starts to get a little bit colder here in this next month.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Kyron Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall to a certain extent, and James Cook and Josh Jacobs. Those guys out of the top 13, those are all on contenders. So their teams are going to be incentivized to utilize them to the best of their abilities.
Exactly. There's no shutting them down late in the season.
Now, James Conner, Chuba Hubbard, Devon Achane, maybe Breece, like the next few weeks will tell us a lot. Those guys, they could fall out real quick. And then if their team has them on contract for the next couple of years, there's no reason to put them in harm's way and risk stuff going forward. All right.
But I do like Jacobs being on a contract going forward. Real quick, though. Josh Jacobs for Tank Dell in a 2025 mid-second.
I would say that.
Let's say it's 205 in a
And again, it depends on if I'm a contender, I'm giving up Tank Dell and the 25. If I'm rebuilding, I'm absolutely giving up Josh Jacobs to go get those other 2 pieces.
Yeah, I was thinking like get a 4th back on the Jacobs side. That felt fair to me.
So let's move on to the wide receivers. Somehow, some way, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Garrett Wilson are our top 4 wide receivers. I don't know how that happened. Who saw that coming? Drake London at number 5. Chris Godwin still at number 6. Amon-Ra St. Brown 7. Terry McLaurin at 8. That's huge. Jaden Reed or Zay Flowers at 9. Jaden Reed at 10. Brian Thomas Jr. at 11. And Darnell Mooney at 12. I'm looking through this in my home league. 12, 13, and 14. Darnell Mooney, Malik Neighbors, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. I've got red drop these like right next to them. I have all 3 of those guys, and they all have 128 and 129 points. All right. Brian Thomas Jr., that ask is going to be steep. Terry McLaurin out of this, like any of these guys, Jamar Chase. Well, okay, first, let me say, I talked about on this program before, Garrett Wilson and Zay Flowers, how the additions, the trades that they made help them, don't hurt them. That's bearing out a little bit right now. Maybe the Jonathan Mingo trade, maybe that boosts CeeDee Lamb a little bit. Anyway, Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 8 right now, looks really, really connected to Jaden Daniels. Out of these guys, this top 15, I think he's the guy that I'm going after.
Zay Flowers?
I think Flowers is a bit more of an ask than McLaurin.
Just because of the age.
Just because of the age.
So those 2 touchdowns for McLaurin, only on 2 catches. And historically, obviously he hasn't had a quarterback, right? But it just hasn't been a lot of trade value for McLaurin. So if anything does go wrong, or they do add a receiver in this next year, the value isn't long term. But for this season, I mean, I think that's fine.
All right, and I do want to take this opportunity real quick. Let's break it down. Oh no, I didn't see that was still up there. Sorry, Brianna, I didn't mean to. All right, I want to take this opportunity to I just want to give myself some flowers. I tend to do that. I take my victory laps when I can.
Do it.
So right now, sitting at wide receiver 19, halfway through the season, we have a kid from the Chargers named Ladd McConkey. # Dads for Lad. He's at wide receiver 19 right now. And in a very important rookie draft, I took over an orphan team. It's a high, we're talking like it's the Fantasy Cares guys, John Bosch, Russ. They're in this league. Dynasty Trade Calculator, if you are familiar with that. And I had a first round pick, and I took Ladd McConkey, and the next pick after me was Rome Odunze. And I tweeted right afterwards, I just drafted Ladd McConkey over Rome Odunze, and I'm not apologizing for it. Right now, Ladd McConkey is the wide receiver 19, and Rome Odunze is wide receiver 59. So to all of you trolls that jumped in that comment section and made fun of me or talked crap or just basically shaded the F out of me for drafting Ladd over Rome Odunze, scoreboard. All right. Okay, tight ends, and we'll finish it out. Brock Bowers, of course, is tight end 1. George Kittle 2, not surprising. Trey McBride 4, Travis Kelce 5. Tucker Kraft is tight end 6. Kyle Pitts is 7. Hunter Henry 8. Zach Ertz 9. Cole Kmet 10. I talked about Cole Kmet before. Love that he's top 10. Hunter Henry, he was Andrew had him. Koopa Fiasco had him as the top 10 breakout of the year, and so far that's coming out. Tucker Kraft, Travis Kelce getting back in it. He was tight end 1 for the week. Trey McBride, we saw his upside. Some people I know were talking about him in the offseason last year as their tight end 1 for the season. Tight end 4 is not too far off. Cade Otton has absolutely made the leap.
And would you trade Otton for the 212? I just got that offer while we were live.
Oh,
and a tight end 1.5, or it's just an extra half point added on to your PPR.
Who are your other tight ends?
Oh, well, I got a decent crew here, I would say, but I was leaning no. I didn't even think you would really consider it. Because I mean, I've got Jake Ferguson, Hunter Henry, Cole Kmet, Cade Otton, Adam Troutman, Theo Johnson, Ben Sinnott, Eric All, RIP, and I just traded away Jatavian Sanders, and I have AJ Barner.
And
so Jared Wiley.
he's trying to get your Cade Otton.
Yeah.
And you're contending? I don't do that.
No. This is a rebuild, but I don't think so for the 212. I might as well just wait it out. This is the number 1 team in the league, just trying to get a free tight end boost. I'd rather just see if I can get a little bit more.
Yeah, Otton has
player.
Tight end 7 and tight end 8 finishes in week 3 and 4, but that's 9 and 11 points. But then he's got tight end 5, tight end 1, tight end 3, 18, 29, and 21 points in the last 3 weeks. He's got the Niners in a bye. We talked about the Buccaneers before, and then he's got green almost the whole way down except for week 16 against Dallas. Yeah, I'm hanging on to Cade Otton. I'm maybe try and move off of Ferguson because he's got that top 10 kind of cachet.
Perception. Yeah.
Yeah, but he just lost Dak. But and then George Kittle at number 2 is exactly where we thought he would be. Zach Ertz is a surprise. Are we making a move for Zach Ertz?
Sure. Like I mentioned, is just Terry McLaurin there, so he's basically the number 2 target. So yeah, why not? I think you could get him for a 4th, honestly, depending on what the team is. Like there's some team there's waivers with Zach Ertz on them in some leagues, not the ones you're in, but yeah, man, I think he's like not even going for a 3rd right now.
So the big message of this week is buy Commanders.
Yeah. The same price you could give a 4th and get Noah Brown as well. I don't really I'm not saying do that, but none of those guys are even going for a 3rd. Nobody wants the Commanders. They still have that stink on them, and they know that they're not the future. But I was hoping maybe Ben Sinnott would take a big leap early, but that was just me thinking that Ertz was done, to be honest.
This is an important topic. I thought 4ths were virtually or functionally useless.
So you give your full piece on it, but in some of the leagues I'm in, like Zach Ertz just has no value. That's what I'm saying. Like some people are willing to do that, knowing that his season's up, especially if they're rebuilding.
4th round picks in 2022 included Jerome Ford, who's been usable, Brian Robinson, Desmond Ridder, my waiver wire pickup of the week, Trey McBride.
Yeah.
2023 4th round picks, Keyshawn Butte, Cedric Tillman, Puka Nacua.
True. Wasn't Tank Dell going in the 3rd to 4th range?
Right. And this year, Theo Johnson, Jalen McMillan, Tyrone Tracy, Troy Franklin, Audric Estime, Bo Nix, Braylon Allen, and Bucky Irving.
And this is a deep class that we're walking into.
Do not think that 4ths are functionally useless. All right. And got to get back to work. Yes, we're going to get out of here. And you want to do a quick story from your? We don't have to do 2 like bad beats. What do you have?
I've got one. Yeah. So I'm in a league that's called the Fantasy Powers League. Shout out to those guys. A new concept where you've got extra powers in addition to just your fantasy players, right? And I ended up trading for the Vampire Power, which turns a player's positive points into negative points. So it's a full swing on the points. And I traded for the power, used it against Saquon Barkley, who had that amazing backwards hurdle and had, pretty much like a 30-point game. So he went from 30 points to negative 30. So that's a 60-point swing. And I end up losing still, even after doing that, I end up losing 135.39 to my score of 135.30. So the difference was 0.09 difference. So I'll say it again, 135.39 to 135.30. I lost after making that huge trade where I actually had to sacrifice a 1 week rental of week 14. I'm giving this person Amon-Ra St. Brown to just use for that 1 week. And I did that to get this power. And it was for nothing.
God,
that's a bad beat. That's getting wrecked.
Yeah,
that was the smallest margin in league history of a game.
That's one of the smallest margins I've ever heard of. Anytime it's under a point, or under a 1/10 of a point, that's ridiculous. All right.
Yeah.
Anybody out there that is a fan of the fantasy footballers, they have the Megala Bowl. It's a redraft league. It's not Dynasty, but the weekly report comes out. Overachiever, me. I was projected to score 102.98. I scored 146.06. Most efficient manager. All of my points were in my lineup, not on my bench.
Nice.
Highest points in loss, me. 146 to 147.18. I lost by less than 2 points. I looked back at it, And again, I was most efficient manager. All of my points were in my lineup and not on my bench. The big thing for me, I streamed defenses. I streamed the Chicago Bears defense that got 8 points. I look at the available defenses for their week 9 scores. And if I had picked up the Cincinnati Bengals, I would have won.
Will they get 11 points?
10.2.
10.2. Yeah, I had picked them up a week earlier, thanks to Theo Grimmager's defensive streamers show on Player Profiler. Guys, go check that out. But yeah, they saved me in a spot.
Yeah, I knew that they would be okay, and I knew that the Raiders weren't gonna. I thought the Raiders were going to keep it a little bit closer. I knew that they weren't going to win.
They turned into the Ritters. So
yeah, that's
you didn't expect that.
Maybe that's a better thumbnail for tonight. The Las Vegas Ritters.
Yeah, right. I got you.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Go ahead and go to playerprofiler.com/news to find our player news archive, where you will find the write-ups on the Jonathan Mingo trade for the day, the Khalil Herbert trade. Follow us on Player Profiler _NFL on Twitter, YouTube. Follow the main channel, Player Profiler, everywhere. Find us on our Twitter handles down below, and also partner platform Undroppables. We've got Jax on a lot of Player Profiler shows and stuff like that. Dynasty F Key does the Cowboys on the Uncovered over on the Undroppables channel. So
Fizzle Dallas made a guest appearance twice on there.
And I do the Raiders show. That's going live tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific. So follow us on all the platforms. We'll be back with you next week, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern time. We'll go over week 10 and get you ready for week 11 and the playoff or trade deadline, if you have one in your league, which you shouldn't. But that'll do it. Anything else to add?
No, good luck this week, guys. Like, subscribe, and appreciate you guys watching. Take it easy.
Yeah. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.
Cool.